Hey guys, it is now week 2 of being at home during the coronavirus. It's probably getting a little bit antsy. So today I took us outside. Strange, I know, because I never took you outside while we were at school, but we're going to be outside today. The reason we're outside is because today we're going to talk about metaphors and similes and all the great figurative languages that we've been covering. Now, for a long time, we've been talking about figurative language in a way that is pretty basic. We're not really being too complicated about it. We're comparing basic ideas like her nose looks like a banana, or something like that. We're connecting these ideas of comparing two things, but we're doing it in the most what's called rudimentary, which means basic ways. We're moving away from this. We're going to start moving towards how does that work with characteristics and people, and what they do is a metaphor of a comparison would be between how they act and what they do compared to something else that we know that is similar that maybe we like or maybe we don't like. It can depend. Now, so why are we outside? One of the great things I've noticed over time is that I love the outdoors, and the more I'm outside, the more I notice simple things. Now, the nice thing about being home and everybody else being home is when you go outside, you don't hear a lot of cars. I don't know if you can hear what's going on behind me, but all kinds of birds are making noise back there. I hear some squirrels running through some leaves. This is a source of figurative language. The nature has been this place where, because it's not people doing things, it's animals and birds and trees and things, we try to combine those ideas of what we hear and what we see to something that makes sense to us and how people are, how people think, or how people look. Even basic things is saying something like somebody is as smart as a rock. The idea of a reason we say that is because we've encountered rocks in nature. But if I'm quiet for a minute here, what you'll hear is birds chirping and squirrels running and all kinds of things. If you're really quiet, you'll probably hear my kids being loud somewhere in my house. So today we're going to talk about that. Now, as time goes on, these videos are going to get more complex. I don't know if this is going to be the best video I make, but as the time goes on, I'm going to try and make better and better videos so that as you watch them, you're not just sitting there like looking at me with a whiteboard pointing things out. So today we're going to be doing figurative language. As we go forward, I'm going to do some shots of certain types of figurative language, and then also giving some examples. You might pop back to me talking in the video, go back and forth. So make sure you watch it all the way through the end. Hey guys, so I'm not going to overly explain metaphors and similes. Basics are this. Metaphors and similes are ways to compare an idea that we don't know versus something that we do know from our background knowledge or our understanding. So when I say he's as smart as a rock, we understand intelligence, and we understand that a rock doesn't have any. So we combine those two things into a simile. He's as smart as a rock. Or if I say he's a bowl in a china shop, we know that china, which are dishes or plates, are breakable. If I put a bowl in there, it'd probably break all those things. So when I combine this idea of a person and I combine with this idea of a bowl in a place where something's really breakable, I'm kind of implying that they're kind of like a big, clumsy person that's going to do a lot of damage. So that could be different ways of damaging. It could be physical, it could be emotional, lots of different ways. But we're comparing this idea of the person that we don't know, this new person or a new character or a new idea, comparing it to a bull, which we've seen what a bull looks like. They're huge and have horns and can do lots of damage. Combining those together to make these ideas. Let's take a look at an example from To Kill a Mockingbird. As we can see on here, our simile from To Kill a Mockingbird is Jim waved my words away as if fanning gnats. Now, we've all experienced the idea of waving like a fly or a gnat away from our face, so that's a familiar idea. Now, when she connects it, she connects to this idea of like when she's speaking, he waves the words away like a fly or a gnat. So she's basically saying it's kind of like he doesn't want to listen to her, because what she's saying, he just wants to get rid of and wave away. So we're making that comparison using the word as, which makes it a simile. And also, it's not like it's a perfect match, but she's trying to give us a way of understanding how he's kind of trying to ignore what she's saying. On the other hand, in the metaphor, I tried to climb into Jim's skin. Now, if we took that literally. You think she's trying to like crawl into his skin. It's kind of weirdly gross. But what she's really trying to say is she's trying to be him for a little while. She wants to climb into his skin. So when she says that, she is making that metaphor that she is being him. Again, this is a little bit more of a direct idea, right? She is trying to be him versus like it's kind of similar. Okay, I'm going to just brush over a few more of these just to make sure that we understand what's going on. So another big one is the personification, where we're given a human attribute to something in nature. The trees behind me are kind of a good example of that. Often I use the example of that the wind whispered through the trees. Now that's to give this human effect to the trees. Now the reason that we'd like to do this personification is mostly because we understand how humans operate, and it's kind of like doing a reverse of what we're doing with metaphors and simile, where we're taking this idea from something that isn't connected to maybe a person and giving it to a person, like comparing them to a rock or a fox or an ox or whatever it might be. And now we're taking a human attribute, put on a thing in order to make it seem more alive, more real. Personification, right? Another few that we want to make sure that we go over: hyperbole. Who doesn't exaggerate, obviously? When we exaggerate, we want to make something big and grand. We don't want to do a little exaggeration, because then what's the point? And the reason that we do that is because we want to make this idea seem big and huge and large. So when we use that hyperbole, when we exaggerate, we want to be clever with that. And that's what our authors and what we are doing with our hyperbole. We don't want to make it a simple thing like, I slept for 10 hours. Well, most people sleep for 10 hours if they go to bed at night. Like, that's not a good exaggeration. If you say I slept for 1,000,000 hours, well, who sleeps for 1,000,000 hours? We're making this grand thing. So what does that really tell me? If you say I slept for 10 hours, yeah, that tells me you're kind of tired. But if you say I slept 1,000,000 hours, man, you're really saying you're tired. So when we think about hyperbole, we want to take it to a different level. Like, we want to be up here. So make sure you think about that as we're going through hyperbole. You know, a lot of times they'll have what's called extremes, always, nevers, you know, almost always, those kind of ideas will keep popping up in those as well, because, you know, or the whole of something, or none of something. We're going to be extreme. Like, the entire earth shook when he laughed. Well, does the whole earth shake when somebody laughs? No. No, it doesn't. So that's something to think about as well. Here are a fun couple examples. This one is my feet are killing me. Obviously 2 feet trying to pour something into a drink to kill somebody. Again, that's just some nice hyperbole. This one is some personification. The brutal wind bullied the trees into giving up its autumn leaves. Wind is not a bully, and autumns just don't give up their leaves, right? So those are things that people do. Hey guys, just a few more that we want to cover real quick. So idioms. We've talked about idioms a lot throughout the year. Remember, they're just phrases or sayings that don't really mean what they say they mean. Like, money doesn't grow on trees, raining cats and dogs, cats got your tongue. Like, we don't really think these things are actually happening. They just have a meaning attributed to them. So when you see those, make sure you're paying attention to them. Another big one that we want to talk about is onomatopoeia. We should have that one figured out. Onomatopoeia is any sound that happens, right? Bang on a table, any of those things. Sorry that the picture shook. A lot of those things. Tick-tock goes the clock. The ticking sounds. The sounds are the actual figurative language. Another big one that we want to make sure that we go over is irony. So irony has 4 different parts, and I'm going to put a little example of that up in a minute here. The 4 parts are pretty basic. One is what we call situational irony. Situational irony is when something happens that we didn't expect. So remember, I gave you the example of the fire station burns down, right? Another one would be dramatic. That means we're reading a story or watching a movie and we know things that they don't know, like in Home Alone, where the robbers are coming in, but we know there's all kinds of traps. Verbal, we've talked about this just the other day, is what is said is different than what is meant. You tell someone to go break a leg, but you don't really want them to go break a leg. You're just telling them to do a good job in their performance. And then the main thing is the definition of irony is a contrast between what is expected and what actually happens. So anytime there's like a twist that takes us a different direction, or that we say a little bit differently than what we mean, we're kind of doing that game of irony. Just to make sure that we got all the rest of those covered, I think I've hit all of them except for alliteration. I want to make sure I cover alliteration really quickly. Big one that we want to talk about today is Edgar Allan Poe's "While I nod, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping." The repeating of a letter, a consonant at the beginning of a word, is giving a sound effect. Na 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 in this case, right? Now that na 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 could be like a kind of like a hum, or a sense of nodding off, or a sense of like no, 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 right? Any of those would work for this situation, but when we have a repeating sound or a repeating consonant that keeps happening over and over again, what we're going to realize is that's a purpose, and the sound is to try to get us to think something. All right, that's figurative language. I got one more last thing to talk about. Make sure you look over the assignments on this today. One of the big ones that we're going to try out is I'm going to try to do something a little bit different, where you're going to either hopefully be sending me some things via email or via your Google Classroom. These are going to be more visual or video-based content. I'm going to see who can do that. For those of you who can't, you're going to just go ahead and do like a drawing representation and send me a picture of that via my email. So look at that assignment in just a little bit here. Also pay attention. There's a couple other assignments I want you to do. One is listening to an essay and answering some questions on that as well, and IXL. So we're going to keep going down that track. If you have questions, make sure you email me, tvandenoord@guadalupecenters.org, or go ahead and hit me up on Google Classroom. Not this week, but the next week, I think I'm going to go ahead and do a Zoom Hangout time or a Zoom call at some point so that you can pop in. We're going to try to get as many people in the class together at once. We'll all be there. I'll do this kind of more live instead of a video, and we'll talk through a couple new ideas and what I want you to be doing. If you have any questions, again, make sure you get hold of me. Thanks.